Hey Dan, welcome to the show. Super excited to have you on. I know we've been trying to set this up for a little bit. Um, I know you through Kieran Halton, who is a guy that I have done some online coaching with, both as like a trainee and a trainer through Rebel Performance. Him and I go pretty far back, and he has always spoken super highly of you. And some of the content that you've had on short form media, Instagram stuff is really awesome. Kind of going back a few years, so it was definitely something I wanted to do is get you on here and actually chat about sports performance. So if you could, man, for those that don't know you, start by giving me, quick background on you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you interested in sports performance.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate you having me on, and appreciate Karen as always the good words. But so initially, like just kind of going way back, what got me into like strength and conditioning? I had started as an intern over at Quinnipiac, and this is maybe 15 years ago at this point. But just to kind of shout out Brajesh Patel over there was great and kind of got me really into the field and kind of everything around it. From there, I moved to a couple high schools doing strength and conditioning coaching. Eventually came down to a gym down in Darien, Connecticut called Prentice Hockey Performance, where we just worked with a ton of athletes, everybody, like general population also, but a lot of athletes, primarily hockey down there and lacrosse. It just tends to be the area. And just the gym would have gotten popular over there. So I was there for maybe close to 6 years, left close to 10 years ago at this point, and started my own gym about actually 5 years ago this month. So from there, yeah, kind of been same deal. I've been working with a variety of different clients from, the older population trying to stay in shape, general health, avoid injuries, to the high school athlete, a couple professional athletes in boxing and hockey, and college athletes. So kind of all over the map there as well.
That's awesome. So let's start at the beginning. We're gonna kind of hone in on the athletes here.
Yep.
So who is the average athlete that you're working with these days? And more importantly, how are they showing up physically compared to years past? Because you've been in the game a little while now, and building off of that, we'll kind of dive into your assessment process. So I'm just curious again, who are the athletes you're working with? What's the general starting point for a lot of them now compared to what you were used to getting into the game?
Sure. So the general athlete tends to be, with some exception, but tends to be, high school is going to be my primary group. I'll have some middle school generally, and I'll kind of get in like what's changed as to why I kind of like avoiding middle school at this point. But some middle school, high school, and college athletes will be the main ones. And just because of my own background, I'll also have a fair amount of grapplers, jiu-jitsu, judo primarily, and boxers. But biggest chunk there is going to be high school. Biggest change, I would say, physically. I mean, physically, as far as their own strength development, it's all, I feel like, just kind of almost, it's gotten better. I think especially where I am, it's kind of a wealthier area. So personal training, I think, has kind of blown up strength and conditioning for athletes. So a lot of them have kind of shown up already with some sort of background in fitness. But the bigger part of that, I think, is like not even how they are physically, just the scheduling. The scheduling is absolutely, it's kind of wild now. Starting with middle school, I'll have kids that are they're playing. It used to be, hockey was a big one, but now it's every sport. I mean, I don't have anyone from a sport where they're not playing 4 seasons year round, practicing close to daily. It's gotten brutal. So that, I think, is one of the big reasons where, like, with middle school kids, I'm kind of like, I'd rather you had some off time to yourself. Parents will call up, they'll try and get them scheduled, and a big part of me is like, I'd rather them just had their own time. Like, if they can just hold on to the passion, hold on to the love of sport, that's going to take them a lot further than seventh, eighth grade training with me in a lot of,
Mhm.
in a lot of ways. And there's exceptions to that, but that's kind of where I've started to change with that part. Because it used to be, seventh, eighth grade, I was like, perfect, let's get it started. Before that, if they're really into it, yeah, like if this is something they love and they're into it, sure. Um, I'll still take them, and we can get into kind of when I would take them and reasons for it. But a lot of the times, I would kind of rather they just did their own thing on their own. Had some free play time, hang
Mhm.
with their not get burnt
Yep.
out.
Hey, Dan, let me interrupt you for just a
Yeah, yeah.
second. Can you is there like you're kind of in a dead spot, so a lot of this is cutting out, which is
All right.
fine because it'll upload on your end, so I can delete all this. but just
Yep.
for the sake of me like hearing the conversation, I don't know what happened. Somewhere you're talking, it just kind of started getting really choppy.
Got you. Yeah, let me move. Yeah, my let me just one sec. Let me just move over here. See if occasionally we're better off. Yeah, I don't know. Got missed as there, but any better here?
Hey, so far it's good.
Yeah. Well, if I see it like kind of reconnecting there too, I'll try and. Um, yeah, I think like the biggest difference I see is just that like every kid is so overscheduled. At least where I am, and
Mhm.
I'm sure this changes depending on geography and where you're at. But the majority of kids are just so overprogrammed. We're kind of getting back like to a couple of the reasons or a couple of the occasions where I will still, take middle school kids is give them a place where, like maybe they are going to be overscheduled regardless. So maybe we just make the gym more of a fun environment for them, and try and create that. Like so
Mhm.
kind of even just kind of jumping into the training for a lot of the kids, I have like this long-term athletic development kind of model in my head. And, a lot of it is like building body awareness, building yeah, kind of trying a little bit of everything. A lot of maybe like bodyweight gymnastics stuff. So that it'll be a place I'll definitely go having fun. But then also for a lot of these kids, they're doing so much already. When
Yep.
they come to the gym, like a lot of them want to hit, they're in seventh grade and they're like they want to hit arms and they want to do like bench press. And so a lot of times I'm like, all right, let's go that route first. Like if this is what's going to get you on board, because consistency to me and just having like the passion right up through high school is going to do a whole lot more to me than having a perfect workout today in seventh grade. So like a lot of times, we'll do that stuff and just gradually plug in the stuff maybe I think is going to help them long term.
Yep.
But maybe, 3 sets of curls and I'm hitting bench press with this kid because he loves it. And so we'll
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah. I mean, I'm 40 and I still want to do arms and bench press. So it's, you
right.
know, you got to keep it in there. And I have a question about that because I think just as another guy who's in the private sector, I get the number of emails and requests that I get for like 8, 9 year olds who these parents really want speed and agility training. And like part of it is I don't want to necessarily just shut them down because I don't want to hand them off to a coach who's going to train them like a upper level high school athlete and do all these ridiculous things with them. But at the same time, like I do want it to be fun. I do want to give them a long pathway and foundation for athletic development because I mean, some of these kids, they're like Johnny be good at baseball, swings the bat 5,000 times in one direction. Mom and dad wanted to work on speed and agility, but the kid walks sideways.
Right.
So, I'm always kind of balancing these conflicting ideas in my head. I just don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I kind of have the same thought where it's like I've said the same exact thing. Like, ideally this kid would be out doing something else, but the reality is he's not. He's going to go somewhere. Like they're
Mm-hmm.
going to in something. So yeah, and it's right. This kid is, maybe he's and like you said, they're 8 or 9, but they're already, he's on this elite team, this whatever. But you watch him move, and yeah, they can't do some of that stuff. So yeah, so in those instances, I'll take it. And then, like, in my mind, I'm like, okay, my primary goal is this kid has to have fun and, like, he's got to build his confidence. So,
Yeah.
like, that's really the main things I'm looking for if we're under, and it goes, like you said, all the way up to, like, my age. Like, but the main thing pre high school, especially, like, I just want him to have fun, build, a love for it, and, like, get him a little more confident. So then, yeah, we'll do movement stuff. We'll do, all the skips crawls, all this body awareness stuff, so that he gets that. And then, whatever, like the little things that he wants to do. Ideally, they could come with a friend and everything to make it a little more fun. Because yeah, like you said, like regardless, they're probably gonna go somewhere. Like we're not gonna get this ideal world where it's you can't come, I get it, and the parents just like yeah, I'll set them outside, have some fun.
Yeah.
Like that's not. Um, so right, I'm kind of on the same board where I have these conflicting thoughts of like what we should do. Should we even take them? What's the best route here?
Yeah, I've literally tried to tell some of their parents like, okay, you want to bring him here and push a sled, well, have him cut yards cut the lawn this summer, cut the self-propelled thing and just have them push the damn thing up a hill. Like there's your work, but they would rather pay. But kind of brings me to a bigger thought of this whole assessment process, right? So we've already talked at least a little bit about some of these differences in terms of these stages of athletic development. So as kids evolve from both a maturity, like biological maturity standpoint, and an emotional and physical and just kind of mental maturity where they can actually handle more intense training. How did your assessment process look? I guess you can start with some of the middle schoolers, but I'm really interested at that high school level for the kids who are ready to start more targeted training. What does that look like?
Sure. Yeah. And I think just to get the middle school and whatever younger out of the way, like I don't really assess. Like I'm just I want them to right off the bat have fun, not feel like they're at like another school, doctor's, whatever visit. I want them, so I'll ask, what's your, do they have injuries? Do they have limitations? What else are you doing outside of here? What do you enjoy? What are your preferences? Like, what would you ideally be doing right now? And then for high school and beyond, college, and after that, I think my assessment has changed and it's gotten a lot less. I used to start off with a lot, and now I think I've really, I have a very minimal assessment process. And
Mm-hmm.
kind of same exact way. It's like, I want to know what's your injury history. Do you have limitations? So it's a lot of questions. It's, are there things you don't like doing? Are there things you enjoy doing? Are there things that you've done in the past that you think have really helped you in your sport? Like, because I'm, what's your sport? What's going to give them success there? How often do you practice? What
Mm-hmm.
else out of here? And then I'll do, maybe depending on the sport, I'll generally do a range of motion thing. I'll have them on the ground. I'll look at hip internal rotation and just hips quick. I'll do the same with shoulders.
Yep.
From there, we watch them move. The other one I'll often do, especially with high school, is, and like there's other performance tests. One of the biggest ones I'll do is a vert test. And the reason I do it is it's super simple. I can do it every time they're in, basically. It gives me, I'll do it, for two reasons for them, and I'll tell them. It's, over the course of this, it's very easy. Are you getting stronger? Or weight on the bar? Easy. The other ones are just performance and athleticism, and like kind of an easy proxy one for power is vertical jump.
Yep.
So I'm like, that better be going up too if we care about that kind of stuff, speed and power, and not just strength. And within that, it's, that number, the vertical jump number it's gonna oscillate a ton depending on what you do outside of here. So it's kind of a good one to give them, because this is every kid now where, they'll come in and it'll be low, lower. We'll have one okay day just because there's so much they do where, you'll have 1 week where they went on and they came back. And a lot of times they'll tell me, they're like, my vert's going to be horrible. I didn't do anything last week. It's going to be awful. It's their best one by like, 3 inches. Like, and it's just a good way to kind of like, hey, like rest, I get a first sport. Like if I'm going to develop skill, yes, repetitions are important. But like physically, if you're going to get better, you need rest. You need these off days. Like this is the stuff that actually helps. Like if we're in here and we got to put out high output, like look at all the days we were at 80%. You took a week off, we're here, So it's just a good way to get that buy-in as well there. I don't know if that kind of made sense there.
Losing you just a little bit.
Yeah. Let's see. Try and move the thing.
I think we got it.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta get better service here. Yeah, so I think, so for me, the vert has been, and there's other performance ones we can get into too, tests that I'll do, but that's just been a big one. A, to monitor, I do want progress, but B, kind of more importantly, is to show them the importance of like rest. Oh, I just get lost. Let's see. We get it back?
Yeah, kind of in and out.
Okay. Moving to this side of the house. Maybe it's better.
We're gonna get all the angles.
All right. Yeah, that's all. And I don't know if that was missed, but just, kind of one of the bigger parts with that is just making sure they understand the importance of rest. So the vert test I could do every time. It doesn't really take anything from their legs. And it could just kind of show them, like, not only are they improving, but is there a time when, like, hey, take this week off or whatever, So that's been a big part of the assessment. Shit.
Yeah, still kind of out a little bit, but I'll go ahead and jump in because I do have some thoughts on this. So hopefully I'm coming through clear for you. But one of the things that I found with our assessments as well. Now I have to confess, like I somewhat just love getting new technology, having new toys. Um, and I like the expensive stuff because I know it's very accurate and I want to get, as little estimation error and algorithm down to some of these IMUs as possible. So that's probably my own cross to bear. But inside of all this, the thing that I've found is that it seems to be when I do simple assessments, but I have more longevity of data. So, kind of to your point, I can test this every week. It doesn't really interfere with my training process. I find that the tests become much more powerful in that sense because now I have a running representation of how this athlete is responding to training versus just a blip in time of this really expansive test that, maybe 5, 6 weeks down the road, I'm trying to make some informed decisions off of where they were, 5 or 6 weeks ago, and it kind of starts to lose some of the validity. So I kind of echo a lot of these sentiments. So I'm curious, what things have you really just the thought were like amazing and you had as a huge part of your assessment, and then you were just kind of like, man, we're not even using this.
Right. Yeah, I think initially I had just built out this, this whole like web of, I can't even remember everything that was on there, but it had range of motion here, vertical power, had all these things, and I, have this little thing drawn up of like the areas that they need. Um, and it just became like, A, it took a long time, B, how often am I going to be retesting this where it's like, am I making improvement here? Because why am I
Mm-hmm.
testing otherwise? And C, it was like everyone kind of fell in the same group, especially if we're talking most high school kids. Like you
Yeah.
kind of need qualities, and this quality of strength, maybe builds up this quality of speed, and vice versa, probably. So like maybe I don't need this huge web of things. I could have a couple. For my own mind, like so the big ones I'll use for if we're sticking to the speed one. A lot of them are just simplicity. So I'll do the vert. I'll do GPS speed stuff just because it's easy, get some speed work, and kind of see their top speed. It's an easy number to give them. We'll do treadmill inside, top speed on that too. I have timing gates, which we'll use as well, but like those are kind of the four big ones there. I'm trying to think if forgotten one. Because I could do it all the time. I could do it within training. I could look at, are they hitting a new number and what's their like rolling average? Like, are they just getting a little bit better? Even their bad ones, or their bad ones even better. So that's kind of where I've started to go. And it's just numbers that like it's easy for the kid to be excited about too, which is the other part, like buying. So if I got the GPS thing and they're hitting 20 miles an hour, like every kid knows like it's pretty good, like they're just these easy numbers. Vert Mad, am I hitting 30 inches jump? Pretty good. Like so that became just an easy one where I could test all the time, had a singular number, and like I go back, I love the technology. So I have a 1080, which I have it with, can get all the readouts. What's their left foot, their right foot? I use that with like zero of the kids, just because it doesn't matter to
Yeah.
them 90% of the time.
Yeah.
I love it. I think it's interesting, but like it's not something they've got to improve so many other like general qualities before we're looking at that stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
like this is for me, but I'm not even gonna like we're not using it. So yeah, to echo you, like I love the technology. I love getting like really kind of into the weeds with it, but we'll have three numbers for the most part if it's speed, and like that's what I'm using.
Yeah,
Um,
I secretly like aspire to get the 1080, and I've tried to explain to my athletes, I'm like, man, this thing is just so amazing. They're like, well, how much does it cost? I'm like, see that car out there? They're like, yeah. I'm like, about that.
yeah, I don't even. Right. They'll
and,
point
and at the end of the
out
day, like, what's it going to tell me? This kid's still slow.
100%, 100%. Like, can't we just use that one? Yeah, you could.
Yeah.
Like, is this one easier to fine tune? And like, does that matter for you? Nah, but I love it. So like, um, yeah. But a lot of that stuff too, like I'll use just for my own audit. So even
Mhm.
if the goal isn't speed, maybe it's had a kid. Just throw examples out where hockey player. The knock was, he was a little undersized. So it was like we had to put on size, So that was our big thing, like put on 20 pounds, but we still needed the speed work. Like, so it was kind of ordered. Okay, we want you to get, stronger and all this, but like some of the drawbacks that occur with size are maybe you get slower. So
Yep.
now keeping the speed work in, and we're just going to keep monitoring it. Like, is it going up or is it staying? Is it maintaining? Because if it's going down, like we're probably doing something wrong. So just that auditing my own kind of programming and make sure
Yeah.
we're, the goal of that athlete, like athleticism
Yeah, I
is
think
the
that's
biggest
huge
part.
in the
Am I
collision sports
reconnecting
too,
again?
because those guys almost get flagrant
Yeah,
with the
shit.
strategies to put size on. Like if I have a baseball guy who wants to add some muscle, it's pretty easy. They tend to be a little bit leaner. He's not going to be worried about putting on 60 pounds
But
in the
hold on,
off
Ryan.
season.
I
Like
think
if he
I'm
puts
losing you
on
here.
10, 15,
Got
we're
one
looking
last
good.
spot.
Some of these guys that are playing, defensive back or on the line, it's like we'll sell out at all costs just to put as much weight on as possible. And then it's like, great, like you made weight, but now you're, you're 10th slower on a 10-yard dash. Like you ain't getting a nobody.
Right, right. Yeah, and it's like I think there's an argument now, and like a fair argument, like where even speed, like is speed the end all be all? Like I also got to be on the field, able to move and all that. And I'm like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Um, but I still regardless think speed is going to help those things. Control is necessary too. I hope they're getting that in their practice. We'll do a little with me, but also it's like I can only measure so much. Like I can't really measure their on field. How smart are they? But I could tell you, like, yeah, they got faster. Like, so now, like, the other end is the sport itself. Like, sure, that is more important, than what I do. But like, there's only so much, I could look at. So I'm looking at the one that most associates itself with the sport. So
Right.
to me, yeah, strength, but speed more so, I would say.
Yeah, and that kind of segs into the whole speed development conversation, which is an area that I've just absolutely grown to love, probably because I wasn't fast by nature. Like a lot of failed athletes, kind of fell into the strength sports in my 20s. And then into my 30s, I'm like, man, shit hurts. I can't move. I'm not fast. So it's been a deep dive over the last, I'd say probably 10 years now. And I mean, I'm still learning stuff every day. But regarding this conversation about speed, I would love to hear about your big rocks when it comes to planning and developing speed for these athletes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the way I'll generally start it with, so if we just take high school for now, and this is beyond high school too, but is I'll start it with kind of three thoughts to them,
Hmm.
and do this while introducing like A drills, just because it's an easy way for me to kind of like segue, and I can get into like talk about those two. But so I'll talk about like number one, and no particular order here, but I'll say number one, it's force. How much force could I put in the ground? So and then like that, I'll have them A marching. I'm like strike the ground
Hmm.
hard, force. If I can put more force in the ground, I'm gonna go further, right? So
Right.
number two, I'll talk about is elasticity, just bounce. And, talk about athletes like the guy who just seems to effortlessly outsprint everyone, never looks like he's working hard, like the bounce. So that'll kind of segue into ace skips. So now I'm starting to tell them, like, all right, I want this to be easy. You should, feel like you're floating. And then number three, I'm saying is just, velocity. How quickly can I move my limbs? How fast can I be? And with that one, I'm saying, like A runs. So now we're just kind of moving. So I'll start there and just have those three and kind of talk about, like which ones I think could be affected the most. And to me, they're force and elasticity. I think,
Hmm.
just sheer velocity, yes. But I think it's a little harder to develop. The other two, I think, like you could see noticeable improvements within, a couple months, like where they could see, okay, cool. I think those are the big rocks that I'll start with and kind of expand out from there. Especially with just seeing like what does this person in front of me need, and like
Hmm.
where does the lead it? Like how are we going to develop that with this person? Um, yeah, because I've had it be different, and I'll kind of let you jump in there too. But depending on the athlete, I've had it be much. I've had it kind of be all over the map. Like so, I've had a lot of boxers who they run a lot of miles. So maybe the elasticity part they're pretty good. They jump rope all day, but
Hmm.
force like I have a fear of putting on weight, so strength training isn't really there. So like for
Yep.
them, it's force, but it's keep this other stuff. So like the stuff that they could relate to and that they feel comfortable with, keep it. But now show them what force can do for them. And then the other side is Maybe it's the strong, the football guy, lacrosse guy he just lifts all the time. He gets
Hmm.
in, everything's so heavy, and it's showing him like, hey, if we can get like maybe a little jump rope in and feeling you bounce, like that's easy energy, like that's putting a little more force into the ground without you even trying. So it's kind of
Hmm.
getting like, um, yeah, I'll let you jump in there. I'm sure more to say there too for you also. Kind of like
No,
where you.
I'm aligned with you here because you always have to finesse these athletes a little bit, right? Because they're going to have things that they're naturally, they just, for whatever reason, like you said in your assessment, what do you like doing? What do you think is helping you? And so they're going to have these natural biases towards things they've done or things that they feel like have helped them. And, the big, strong lineman may not see a need for learning to run at max velocity. And so, that's where I'll have a conversation with them. And, nowadays, the guys at the 300-pound plus guys at the combine are just absolutely gassed. I mean, some of these guys are clearing 20 miles an hour. And so if you look at like, the Newton meters of how much force, how impactful that collision is going to be between a man of that size and them running at that speed. I mean, a human is literally going to ricochet off of them. And so, for those guys, it's like I want them to understand that, you know, again, all of this training is we're filling empty buckets physically. Like this is designed to help you do what you do at a higher level, but in no way is this a replacement for the sport. And so it does kind of, you just kind of have to work that a little bit, but I really like the way you introduced this force elasticity and velocity conversation to athletes because it's just a really appetizing way to deliver this to what can be just a super complex topic for kids of just, what do you mean sprint? Like, don't I just, is run fast just, is that what I'm supposed to do? Like, is that it?
Right, right. No, 100%. And it starts to get, yeah, it starts to get buy-in, and then where I could just take it to whichever direction we want to go. Even just kind of introducing some of the run drills, like, we could argue all day, like, are A drills effective or whatever, but um, yeah, I think for me it's good, like, because it starts them from a place of like, I don't know this athlete yet. I got to see how they move. I know maybe, getting them a little more front side keeps them a little more protected from maybe a hamstring injury right now. But also just like, and maybe I replace that with something else because that's the type of person I have in front of me.
Right.
But it starts that conversation where now we could like say why. And the more I can say why, and the more I can have this athlete think like, all right, there's a reason I'm doing this, and the less he's just kind of going through the mode like, ah, shit, we can do the drills again before we run or whatever. Then I'm like, all right, now at least we have, there's purpose. Because yeah, like I think I could love the physiology stuff like as much as I want, but I'm the same way. Like if they're not bought in, then they're not going to put the output into something, and then we're not going to get like what we want out of it anyway. So yeah, to me, it's just like, what could we say to get this person to go hard on this exercise, whatever I'm trying to accomplish. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and that's been like a good way to start it, of just introducing those topics, and then from there branching off. Like, all right, it's force, let's squat, let's do resisted sprints, let's do whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So or
Yeah.
less.
We get the pendulum's always swinging, right? It's everybody's researching horizontal decrement of ratio force. So it's like we need more horizontal force applications. So now everybody's running with sleds that are super heavy. And then it's like, well, maybe that was too much. And so now they're really, really, really light. And sometimes just being simple, just train and develop and honestly use your coaching eye. You can tell if something looks athletic or not if based on what you're trying to get out of it. I think sometimes we intellectualize this whole process too much and it just ends up kind of confusing the athletes, confusing ourselves and just making everything unnecessarily difficult. But um, one area that I do want to inquire a little bit more, Dan, is change of direction. So we talk about speed, and a lot of us associate straight line speed, but obviously team sport athletes are going to need to move in multiple planes. So I'm curious, how do you approach that? Is this something that you find worth evaluating, or do you think that they're getting enough of that in their training currently?
Right. And this is something I kind of go back and forth with a little bit. Um, the last point is especially, and that's the, are they getting enough of it, in their training? And I think the answer would be yes and no. They are, I think, in a way where, well, we'll just start to like, how do I assess it? So I would do, initially, again, this is something where I started doing, maybe it was a 5-10 5 drill, and, would assess that way. And now I've kind of gotten away from that just because the setup and the amount of times I was able to repeat it and see, like, am I improving this quality? Am I actually able to keep assessing this to see if the improvement's coming wasn't there? I'm like, all right, if this assessment isn't going to work to a problem, whatever, then I'm going to get rid of it. So how I assess it now is kind of like you said, it's the eye. Like, I'm just looking at them, and I don't
Mm.
even think that's any less valid. I think that and then asking them how they felt are just as valid. So things I'll do a lot of, people I'll borrow from are like Lee Taft stuff, Tony Lonnie
Yep.
stuff. I'll steal a lot of their work. And then the third thing I'll kind of do is I'll build output as well. So maybe that's a lateral resisted sprint or drag, whatever. And then maybe I'm pairing that with something that's a little more creative. Like I'm asking them, to maybe juke me, but do it in a way that's, like spin move, do something, new. Just kind of build that creativity too, and kind of show them the importance of, like, it's not all just, robotic movements. Like,
Mhm.
you're an athlete, be an athlete, like, what do you do well?
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, kind of long-winded answer that I don't even know if I got it, but the way I assess is I at this point, like, it's tough. Just because in terms of how often I'm going to repeat that assessment, how do I build it is yeah, borrowing a lot of their work as far as angles and being able to accomplish these angles from different areas. And then it's build output potential, force, layer that with creativity. So they also just keep engaged, like have fun, realize the importance of it. That's kind of my thought. I don't know. Yeah, how you do it, I'd love to hear.
I don't think the aspect of spontaneity is talked about enough because many of these kids now, and this goes back to an earlier point, they are overscheduled. They're playing way too much. There's so much structure to what they're doing now compared to just having free play. So, this is just kind of a drastic example, but we would make up random games with random rules and random moves and just things that you had to do. And sometimes just playing with the boys or playing out with the kids in the street, you would have all of this movement creativity because I don't know, maybe there was a sewer at this part of the street or there parked car, and so you had to kind of navigate, the spatial constraints that you were under. And so few athletes nowadays, I feel like they're missing that spontaneity. Like we can work on great, defensive change of direction mechanics, but when when they get possession or they need to, attack in a certain way, it's very robotic and just almost like pre-scripted. So I love that you're including that into the program. I would like to hear more examples because I'm always trying to figure out how to infuse this into what we do.
Sure. Yeah, and I think, like, that's a big part too, right? And I'm probably similar. Like, somebody could have a ton of output, super fast, but then you see them on a field, and it's like they don't know where to go. They can't make quick decisions. So I'm just trying to think of a few off the top of my head. Like, one is just a simple mirror drill. I mean, I've got, like, the kids love it. I have professional boxers that love it. Like, like everyone just has fun with that stuff, and
Yeah.
we'll put in different constraints in it of, like, you're just trying to juke the other person, and it's like it ends up being one of the more fun things we do. um well, even, this is agility, but also just kind of movement. We have a mini hoop in the gym. So, maybe we're doing cleans that day, but we're pairing it with a dunk. Like, okay, you could dunk pretty easy. Like, show me something else, like I want a 180,
Yeah.
I want 60, like stuff like that, where it's maybe not exactly, like a field movement, but it's just building this creativity, this ability to think on the fly, do something new, which I think is just as important for, like, you look at the best athletes, like, yeah, they can make a hard cut and go this way, but they also just do something. You're like, oh, where did that come from? So I think it's building that ability and having them not shy away from that ability. So output, and then yeah, do something like new, do something exciting. And we'll try and do that. Yeah, with whether it's competing with each other or just, yeah, some sort of constraint based fun thing. Trying to think of some of the other ones we've done, like a variation of that, like the gladiator ball, where you have what are we? I don't know. It was like the frisbee getting into the bucket thing, but just playing
Oh,
defense,
yeah, yeah.
you know, and that even, yeah, all ages seems to be that's the stuff that's the most fun. So that's been cool to see.
No, definitely got to get him playing more. I can't think of the guy off the top of my head. His name was Michael. His last name started with a Z. He used to have a gym in, I think, Michigan or something, but he had a a games book, like an ebook of just games he would play with his athletes. And I mean, some
Yeah.
of the stuff that was in there was just absolutely wild. And it's like, it's these things that like, you just get hyper competitive with. Like it's the dumbest game. There's not a trophy for it, but it's like you're going to see a certain level of intensity from your athletes that you don't get doing anything else. So, um,
100%. Yeah, you think it's gonna be stupid? Yeah. Sometimes I'll put it in like, they might not like it, and it fires the whole. The rest of the day is like that much better. Everything's fired up. It ends up being the most fun part.
mhm.
Just yeah. So
No, I love hearing that. It totally reinforces something that we need to do in our program. Um, Kind of continuing the conversation. So we're just progressing through, like, I guess, your ideal session or kind of the things you're doing. We've talked assessments. We've talked
Mm-hmm.
about speed development. This gets a little bit more, I think, pragmatic, kind of straightforward. But what are your thoughts on strength as it relates to speed and performance?
Sure. Um. Yeah. No, I think it's super important. And to different varying degrees. But just thinking of examples. I'll go through kind of a few that I have in my head right now, and where I think it matters. And I've got like the high school track athlete in my head where he had been, he's a 100-meter, 200-meter runner, um, decently fast, not nothing like too exceptional, but he didn't have any strength, like, so when we started squats, it was, legitimately like 8 kilogram kettlebell, and you're watching him kind of go all over the place. It's like a
Hmm.
junior, so like a little behind the strength curve there. Um, but then, which is also cool about a high schooler, you could watch them gain strength in 3 months. That's, like
Yeah.
pretty. So, just so in terms of like that kid specifically that I have in mind, his times went down. I mean, I think it was nearly half a second, off 100, which is pretty damn good. And we did do speed work, yes. But to me, he was probably already doing that just, at his track practice. Granted, this was off season. I think the bucket we kind of filled was his strength is the limiting factor. He
Hmm.
couldn't put force on the
Yep.
ground. So we kind of improved there. So depending on the athlete, like kid like that, yeah, strength is huge. He's going to need it. And then as we kind of travel up, um, like say we have, more of an established, he's got the strength. I tend to I'll side more of a speed side. And this
Okay.
is myself where speed tends to hold on to strength really well. The opposite isn't always true.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, but having said that, I've also noticed like, so maybe somebody has, let's just use easy numbers. They've got a 500-pound deadlift, um, sprint fairly well. So we're doing a lot of speed work, and maybe every now and then we're just ensuring the strength is there. We're staying a little lighter. Part of that is so we're not interfering with the sprint work.
Yep.
I do think at a certain point we need to come back and make sure like that 500-pound deadlift is still there, because I think you could kind of lose it, and just the body's ability to express that, may need to be revisited. Um, so a little more kind of like, I don't know, nuanced or like less so. Yes, strength is necessary, but doesn't need to be our main focus. Um, and then who's the kind of a last example is just boxers. I have them, and I love that population, and they tend to shy away from strength with
Hmm.
the fear of gaining size. Most of them want to, they've got a weight class they've got to fight in, and they do not want to gain size. For them, though, so I'll dose it a little bit differently. I'll dose it with the thought of like everything's accelerative. You are moving through. If it's a squat, we are moving through it fast.
Hmm.
So like heavy. If I'm knowing their output's high, I'll sometimes even just hide the weight with Kaiser.
Yeah.
Doesn't get them sore, because I also know, the buy-in again. Like if tomorrow they're sparring and their legs are crushed, they're not going to want to keep doing it. But what I've noticed to them is the strength is there, and they've, said two things. Like one, in a clinch or something, I can push them back and I feel good and my power is still there. And two, the power itself feels a little better. So I think, to me, it's not sprint speed, but it's hand speed and the ability to kind of deliver power. Like, I guess, with them, I'll generally, we'll talk about power a lot. It's something everybody can kind of relate to. And I'll say, speed, you guys know, like speed, we're going to do the speed stuff. But if power's here and speed's here, like the other part that's going to bring it up is force. So it's having that conversation, Um, so kind of, yeah, you're going a few different examples there. I think strength is huge depending on the sport to build speed. It's not the end all be all. I think speed at a certain level, especially if they've got a high output potential, will do a better job of building strength than the other way around. But that's if
Hmm.
they're potential is high. Like, if it's a high school kid, it's probably not that high. So, yeah, I don't know where you kind of fall there.
Well, I mean, my background is I have extremely overestimated the value of strength
Hmm.
by virtue of having some powerlifting background, some strongman. Um, that said, the pendulum is probably settled somewhere in the middle. A lot of
Mm.
the athletes that I'm working with, like you, especially the early high school kids, they're just force deficient. And so I want to teach them how to move well, and then just get strong doing that. And it doesn't have to be, you really don't have to rush this process. I see some other gyms on Instagram in my market and other markets, and it seems to be this like arms race of who can get the strongest the fastest, and these kids are on their toes on like a pendulum squat, or just lifting with technique that I'm like, what tissues are we actually loading? So strength can come by pretty easy. And to your point, like, it doesn't have to be to maximal muscular failure. Like, these guys don't need to be crushed from this. So, I think it is valuable, but to your point, at some level, I just think that the adaptations start to go in opposite directions.
Hmm.
At the extreme end of strength, we kind of don't have a bias of time. I've got an infinite amount of time to produce force. And on the other hand, when we're doing speed, especially top, max velocity type of stuff, time is a huge constraint. And so, I find for team sport athletes, like, they can probably get away with more strength because a lot of it is short accelerative work, and that seems to be very helpful. But if they really want to raise the ceiling, I think strength has less and less value at those levels.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with that. Yeah, where like to your points, maybe I'm also getting strength just for a little bit of resiliency if it's a contact sport. But and then your other point, yeah, I have a lot of kids or people that their training age isn't that high. Like the vast majority, where and it makes it nice because now I can do stuff where I'm not going as heavy. We're not killing them.
Mhm.
They're okay for practice tomorrow, but they're still getting these strength adaptations, these benefits. So it's kind of like I'm okay with that population. Like we don't have to do much here, and you're gonna get stronger. You'll see the benefits. We can avoid the drawbacks. So yeah, no, I'm with you. Um,
Absolutely. Kind of building on this, we've talked a little bit about like the 1080, some of the tech, timing gates and stuff like that. I'm curious what other technology is kind of just infused into your practice at large. Like, what are you using these days?
sure, sure. So yeah, kind of going back to reiterate the stuff. If I'm doing a performance assessment, I will use primarily Vertec, and then the Vert Mat, just jumping. I'll use GPS monitors for sprints. I'll use timing gates for sprints. Um, and that I'm using either maybe it's a 10-meter fly or 40-yard dash because
Mhm.
everybody likes it. So those are kind of the biggies. Treadmill would be the other one. Top speed, super easy to see, super easy to do often.
What
And then
treadmill are you using?
I'm using it's a knockoff skill mill, so it's curved treadmill, but yeah, gives you at least an output reading. The other one actually I haven't the Ohm Runner. Have you used that at all?
Mm-mm.
So it's got this isokinetic ability. It's about 25 yards of line and kind of like 1080. You could sprint with it and do some other stuff. But
Hmm.
so a lot of high school kids, I'll put it at 10 miles per hour just because I've done it with so many of them that there's like a certain wattage number that I know that's pretty good if you could hit it. So like that's another one we'll use often, and it's just another thing where they could compete. They like here's a number, guys, can you hit it? Um, so those have been fun ones. A little bit of the velocity based stuff honestly, it's more just to ensure they're hitting output, like that they're trying.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then as far as some of the other things, I'll use heart rate monitors a little bit if that's kind of my goal in the session. We're looking more work capacity. I'll use Moxie monitors a little bit. A lot of that stuff is more like for my own. Like I'll
Yep.
use my fun. But occasionally there's problems within, maybe it's an athlete or something and something's going on. It's like, okay, let's take a deeper look. And we'll look at, oxygenation at a certain tissue and see. But
Yeah.
so yeah, probably the biggest things with technology. I'm trying to think what else. 1080 that'll again that could do so much. Biggest thing I'm looking at it with a lot of them is maybe it's probably top speed. Like again, just something easy for them to look at. For
Yeah.
myself, maybe, but for them, yeah, it's try and keep it as basic as can be.
Yeah, I'm in a pretty similar boat. I think majority of what we're using these days is really looking at the output metrics.
Mm.
The kids are going to identify with the most. We have force plates, and I might look at average braking forces, eccentric rate of force development, some of those variables, but they're completely meaningless to the athlete. They're like, can I jump higher?
Right.
So the rest of it is just kind of baked into the whole training process.
Now, will you change some of your own? Like, will you use the force plates to kind of dictate your own programming or where you might head with that athlete?
Yeah. So we have our athletes jump every week on the force plates. Primarily, we're looking for jump height, and it's more about trends. So we'll see decrements after a long weekend of tournaments. We recently added a shred mill, so an incline treadmill with some resistance.
Yeah. How do you? I keep.
It's I'm really enjoying it, and I'll tell you why we got it. I have roughly maybe 15 yards at the most that we can sprint indoors,
Mm-hmm.
and really accelerate. And some of my faster guys, 15's like pushing it because they got to slam on the brakes, before they're hitting the wall.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then we have a true form, so curved treadmill, and we would use
Yep.
that for some top speeds. I really found that my athletes were struggling with the transition zone of, building their acceleration into a max velocity run. We have an area in our parking lot that we can go, but it's asphalt, so that you can't get a lot of reps. I don't want kids, their shins and ankles and knees, to get beat up from running on asphalt. And honestly,
Mm-hmm.
like we're the building that I'm in is a physical therapy clinic, so they salt the fuck out of our parking lot, and so like we get cracks and holes, and like what it was 2 years ago, it's not even like there's like one little lane that we can use. So I'm just less eager to get out there and use it. And we just needed something to fill the gap that was going to allow us to get longer runs and get to the level of output that we wanted. And so I was very leery because the handless nature of it, or of most of the gears that you use on it, I wasn't sure that it was going to be really effective. That
Like with
said, yeah, I'm like,
the.
I mean, what are we, like ostriches here? Like, we don't, we got to use our arms. But I found that it's actually not a hindrance. We do enough technical rhythm timing work with like our A series stuff that I'm not too concerned about that element of it. And kids seem to be able to transition with it really nicely. So it's turned out really well. We're just now kind of breaking outside and timing some stuff. So I'm seeing some jumps in kids' performance, and it's a relatively easy thing for us to do. And I don't know that there's any magic to it other than we were hitting zones, intensities, and distances we weren't able to before. Now that said, we're still keeping our repetitions um, under 10 seconds for sure, and when we can help it, 5 seconds or less. So the 40 yard that you can do on that is pretty long. Some kids can take up to 8 seconds. Not that they're running an 8-second 40, but again, you don't have hands and you actually have some resistance on the belt, so it's not a true, but that starts to get a little bit long because you just see like after about 30 yards, it becomes a little bit of a slog.
Right.
Yeah, that's been valuable and it's quick. Because sometimes we have, 5 or 6 athletes in a group. One of the other benefits that I found is there's a little bit of downtime. So we've been just kind of sprinkling in some filler work to just help athletes move a little bit better. It's maybe work on some other elements of just, stiffness, coordination, timing that they
Yeah.
weren't getting before. Or maybe we were just doing so many reps back to back, felt like they were getting a little fatigued. So for those reasons, I feel like it's been a really good fit for what we do and the space that we have. But I would love to have like GPS monitors on these kids. Let's get out, let's run. We could break it into a force velocity profile if we wanted. I think it's probably more than we need for a high school athlete, but just for the sake of intellectually stimulating me, it sounds like something fun that would I could break down. So that's kind of
Yeah.
where we are. I mean, do you have other questions on that or any
Yeah.
thoughts?
No. Right. I'm kind of the same way. With the parking lot being oversalted, but also just I'm in the Northeast. I'm Connecticut, so it's like how many months do we really get outside? It's
Yeah.
start to be able to go out now till whatever October, November. So yeah, there's just a long time when like indoor is all we have. Where
Mhm.
yeah, the treadmill seemed, and I just have limited space also. So the treadmill is something I looked at. Like this could be good. Curved treadmill I love. Good for some whatever work capacity, getting some technique work. But yeah, putting
Yeah,
force in the
it's been great. It's got a big footprint. I've kind of wedged equipment into the space that I have. We've only got about 4,000 square feet. And I
yep.
just added Smith machine too. And then, we changed our force plates up. So now we've got like a IMTP rack on it. So it's got these two vertical bars. So they're less portable than they used to be. We kind of have a place for them. Plus the Proteus takes a huge footprint. Like we are just
Had
like
that
we are maxed out. I'm like, we need more space.
right.
But it's just not available at this point.
Yeah, kind of same boat. I would love to get a few pieces, and I'm like, maybe this is helping me not get them because yeah, I would just keep filling it up, fill it up. So I guess something to be said for holding back, having some constraints, and working with what you got. But yeah, I would love to get some of those pieces.
Yeah. So man, we're coming close to an hour here, so I want to start to wrap up. I got one more kind of big question for you, and then we'll go into the end here. But just for experienced coaches, I think it's valuable to understand some of the mistakes that you've made yourself. So, I kind of framed it as what are some of the big mistakes you're seeing in the industry, but more specifically, I'd like you to just maybe touch on your own evolution over the last 1 to 2 years. What things have you changed course on, or just modified or improved in the past 2 years?
Sure. Yeah, I think I'm always kind of going back and forth on like even before we spoke of just like kind of looking at what I was doing 5 years ago, and some of which I just kind of forgot about. It's like, oh, that's
Mhm.
I should get back into that. Just kind of always having a new thought process where it's like, maybe that wasn't so great. But if I could kind of like the big one to me is just getting, like we've talked about, better and better at looking at the person in front of me versus like what I might think is they need.
Mhm.
Like I'll always, what sport are they playing? Have some primary goals, but like, what are their goals? Like, because even my own training, we could do all the physiological stuff we want, but like my best top speeds are hit when I'm with friends or when I'm with competing, or I just am in a good mood, like, so like that stuff I have to, kind of consider. So it's getting like always just kind of getting better at balancing those two things. What do I think they need? And then who's the person in front of me? Like, what do they want? What's going to keep them engaged, happy? And I think that's been kind of a constant like progression of realizing, there's no panacea, like what's going to work for everybody. It's who's the person here? Like, how do we get him to want to be here more?
Yep.
Because it's not perfect. Like, consistency is going to be better than anything else I could do. If he's here, whatever. If he's here more, we'll improve that way. So I
Yep.
think that's the big thing. I think that's the progression over all the years of just kind of getting better at that.
Awesome. I love that. That's so true too, because do you train, is it private, semi-private? Like what's the model you have?
Yeah, it's all private now. With if it's kids, maybe they'll come in with a group of 2, 3, 4 tops. But yeah, private,
Yeah,
one-on-one affair.
similar to us, our athletes, we run 5-to-1, and
Mm-hmm.
most times, and like just having a couple like buddies there. We had we had this group of guys. They would schedule like about five of them. They were all baseball players at the same school. Five of them would go at 3 o'clock. Five of them would start at our 3:30 spot, and it just kind of became one like mega session.
Yeah,
So we have two coaches trying to police this, but man, they would. I was like, you guys are the only group that can take 2 hours to do a 75-minute workout, but they wanted to be there. They were hanging out. They were goofing between sets. They got the work done. Like
yeah,
I'm doing that. Like these guys weren't lazy. I'm not insinuating that at all. They trained hard,
right.
but the rest time periods may have been some very loose boundaries. But they trained hard. They pushed each other. They got incredible results. And we've had other kids where maybe their friends come and then all of a sudden they can't be at the same time, and they're not there because they're not getting the same thing out of it when they're not with their friends.
Oh, I just started lost you.
We back?
1 second. If you can hear me, just
You frozen.
yeah, 1 second. It's just reconnecting. I tried to move to grab my charger. All right, while it's let me just grab my charger quick while it's reconnecting. Sorry about that.
Got you.
Let's see. I realize I'm at 2% here. Didn't want to die on it.
Now you're good. We might
No,
make it, but just
oh, we're good. Okay. Yeah, just that like the group dynamic, just yeah, huge. I mean, yeah, that to me is yeah, you're gonna get more out of them, and they're gonna come more. Like so that's I'd rather that. 100% with you.
I'll be honest. Sometimes I just like goofing with the boys.
Yeah. Oh, for sure, for sure. And like, yeah, I think we're probably all the same way. Whether it's middle school up to 40 or beyond. Yeah, where it's I'll get a better workout in. I'll
Mhm.
if it's a hard like cardio, whatever conditioning, whatever you want to call it, session. Like I'm not so good at doing them on my own, but if I'm with some buddies, we're joking around. Oh my god,
Yeah,
it's night and day session. Yeah, I actually get it done. So yeah, complete agreement.
that's huge. Dan, man, I appreciate you coming on today. It's been like ton of information. I love just chatting with other guys about what they're doing, what's working, what's not working, and obviously, I feel like we're pretty aligned on a lot of things, so that makes it easy to to really like you.
No,
Um,
for sure.
but for people who are trying to find out a little bit more about you and what you're doing, where can we find you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram with consistency slash some breaks between it, but build CT is the Instagram handle. I'm trying to get better at posting more stories. I'll have be fairly consistent at points with the stories, but yeah, anybody if you want to reach out on there, I should be able to get back to you and absolutely.
All right. And any current projects that you're testing on yourself or others?
Uh, so yes and no. For myself, I'm competing in track also, so trying to just get myself faster,
Oh,
and
wow.
gonna start volunteering with the high school track team too to kind of put a couple of those things into practice and see how it works in a team setting.
Oh, that should be a lot of fun. So, how old are you, man?
40.
Okay, we're like right around the same age.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've looked at it. I'm like, oh, I don't know, man. Like, I see these videos of 100-year-olds running like 13-second hundred or 13 seconds when they're 70 or 80. I'm like, maybe I could do that. I don't know.
Oh
So,
yeah, you should. You should. I just met a couple guys at 58 years old, and I think he's running like an 11,500, which is freaking moving, almost 60.
I
I
mean,
think the
he's like,
400-meter runner was doing like 52.
oh,
Just
Jesus. Yeah.
so yeah. So it's there's plenty of time. All
All right, brother. Well, hey, man, I
right.
appreciate it. It's been an honor. Thanks for carving some time. And then just remember, hang on here so we can. Uh,
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. This was great.